me. And before I be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. No more weeping. No more weeping. No more weeping. No weeping over me. And before I be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. I have some words from Coretta Scott King that I'm going to open with. And it says, I must remind you that starving a child is violence. Suppressing a culture is violence. Neglecting school children is violence. Pushing a mother and her family is violence. Ignoring medical needs is violence. Contempt for poverty is violence. Taking our vote away is violence. I want to be ready for change to come. I want to be ready for change to come. I want to be ready for change to come. I want to be ready for change to come. These are songs from the marches that we learned to revere and got made change, that John Lewis sang as he was marching in the streets of Birmingham, Washington, and all over the country. And the thing that we know is that John Lewis was a man who strived for freedom. We are here today to commemorate the work that he did, and we are here to sustain the work that he did so that we will have a say in how we are going to be governed. We have to stick together, and we have to stand up for our rights, because as you know, there's so many things out here in today's society that is they're trying to take our voting rights. They're trying to take away educational rights. They're trying to maintain us in poverty. They're trying to do away with something I love called Head Start. They're trying to take away things like HHR. They're trying to take away with this 2025 Act. They're trying to put us back. And you know, we can talk to young people, and we can say, oh, people died, and they were beaten. And no, we can't. They may not value that. We've got to educate people, and we've got to get people involved in this process so that we continue to move forward as a country. I'm telling you, there's some chants, and the chant that I want to lead is, I want you to say voting rights. And then I want you to be able to say now. Right? What do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? When do we want it? Now we're going to say democracy, and then now. What do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? When do we want it? Do we want fair districts? So what do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? When do we want it? Ethics reform. Is that something we can live with? What do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? When do we want it? Do we need clean elections? What do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? When do we want it? elections to be secure, to be safe, to be valued. So, secure elections. What do we want?
Secure elections.
When do we want them?
Now.
What do we want?
Secure elections.
When do we want them?
Now.
All right then. I tell you, today we're here to commemorate John Lewis, the work that he has done, and hopefully we can work together to get the John Lewis Act passed.
That's right.
But there's a lot of work for us to do, a whole lot of work, and we're going to have to stand forward together, not one step back, forward together.
Not one step back.
Forward together.
Not one step back.
All right, then. I hope that we have an audience here with us today. This is an action that is going on all across the United States. And I'm hoping with us putting on social media that we'll have people to tune in and get involved. And we all need to make sure that we spread the message. We spread the message. We engage people. We just can't rest on our laurels. That's what they want us to do. We got to get out of here and work, and we got to get people to vote. So at this time, we're going to start with some of our dynamic speakers that are here today. We have Reverend Ron English, who probably was in many of those marches throughout the South and has led so many actions here in West Virginia. He is currently the NAACP president of the Charleston unit, and he's going to give us thoughts on the life of John Lewis. Reverend English.
Thank you so much, Karen. Glad to be here. It's my delight to be able to be here in recognition of John Lewis and for the cause that brings us together. And I'm really glad to be representing the Charleston branch of the NAACP in the process of being here. There's a little situation here with my computer. Oh, here we go. There we go. All right. John Lewis shared the vision with his mentor and friend, Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr., and that was to redeem the soul of America. The focus of his mission assumed that America had a soul to redeem. Soul is now associated more with music than religion, but John Lewis was inspired by Dr. King, who was inspired by Mahatma Gandhi, and who borrowed from him the term soul force. John Lewis was raised in rural Pike County in Alabama by his parents, who were sharecroppers. When he was 18 years old, he wrote Dr. King a letter that made such an impact that Dr. King invited John Lewis to come to Montgomery, which was about 50 miles from his home city of Troy. He said that at that meeting, Dr. King asked him, "Are you the boy of Troy?" His response was, "Yes, I am, John Robert Lewis," using his full name to signify the full measure of his zeal to follow him. In 1961, he participated in the Freedom Rise, where he endured physical assaults. He was attracted into the movement by Dr. King, but he was mobilized by the magnetism that served to prompt his participation that landed him in what he came to call good trouble. John Lewis said, "When you see something and it's not right, say something. Do something. Democracy is not a state. It is an act that each generation must do its part to build the beloved community in a nation and a world society that will be at peace with itself." John Lewis said, "When historians pick up the pen to write history in the 21st century, let them say that it was your generation who laid down the heavy burden of hate, that peace would finally triumph over violence and aggression and war. So we come today to celebrate the work of John Lewis. May we be inspired and motivated to share the soul of John Lewis, the boy from Troy that spoke at the Democratic National Convention in September 6, 2012, said, "My dear friends, your vote is precious and almost sacred. It is the most powerful nonviolent tool we have to create a more perfect union." And so we come today to honor the legacy of the boy from Troy who was attracted into the civil rights movement by Dr. King, but left his own legacy with a magnetism and energy that prompted him to keep participating and prompting good trouble. Recently, a group of white supremacists showed up in Charleston in a covered truck, brandished their weapons, got back in the truck, moved on. It caught Mayor Goodwin and the chief of police off guard. However, I was encouraged by a conversation that Pastor Marlon Collins and I had with the mayor on what she had learned from this situation that would raise awareness in Charleston. May the spirit of John Lewis rule and awaken our awareness to the reality of racism that has taken new form of complexity in the public square. Good trouble is still needed to upset patterns of benign neglect in our communities. So may the spirit of John Lewis rule our thoughts, guide our feet, and control our lives. Amen.
When the freedom to vote is under attack, what do we do?
Stand up, fight back.
Again, stand up, fight back. Everywhere we go, people want to know what people want to know who we are. So we tell them, we are the voters, the mighty, mighty voters, fighting for freedom, fighting for justice and the people's rights. Thank you, Reverend English, for that information on John Lewis and his background. And we have a young, dynamic pastor that's here to speak with us today. I just happened to be in Morgantown on the day of the supremacists coming into Charleston, walking on these grounds and walking through the streets of Charleston. And one of the vice presidents of the university at WVU came up to me and she says, "Do you know what's going on in Charleston?" I said, "No." And she told me the assault that was given to this fine city. And I was just so glad that we left it in good hands with Reverend Collins, because he was driving down the boulevard. He confronted them. He was not afraid. And that's the kind of people that we need to lead this effort in order to inspire young people, old people, communities to vote. We need people like him and Reverend English to speak up and to get out the vote so that we can truly make change for our children and our grandchildren. So at this time, the pastor of Shiloh Baptist Church, Reverend Collins, if you'll come up and share a word with us.
Thank everybody. I still to this day don't understand why people want to hear me talk, because I normally say things that other people aren't willing to say. The Voting Act, John Lewis Voting Rights Act, is something that we have to make sure that we stay proactive on, because voting is the most essential tool we have in making sure that this country stays free. And right now, with the political climate that we're in, voting is the most essential element that we have to make sure that we don't end up with a dictator in the White House. One of the things that Ms. Karen and Dr. English mentioned is the white supremacist group that came, marched through our city, and just back there posted up and tried to do a little demonstration. I stood in front of them and challenged them, and kind of got me a little out of character because I'm not really a speaker, I'm a fighter. I've always been that way. But one of the things that I learned from a very early age, during voting time, my mother, when I was 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, would carry me to the voting polls, and we would stand in line, and every voting cycle she made sure that I saw that we had specific rights, not only as Americans, but African Americans, because at the reality, we're standing here in 2024. I'm 54 years old, and it wasn't that much long ago that black people didn't have the right to vote. And so what I always do is I try to make sure that young people that look like me, make sure that they understand their power in the vote. Right now, as we're standing here, remembering John Lewis, the Republicans are in their convention lying to each other, lying to themselves, and plotting to strip as many rights as they possibly can from the people in this country. They've already taken Roe versus Wade. They've already stripped the woman's right to choose what happens with her own body. After a while, they're going to take as many rights as they possibly can, and they chose their brand new Jesus to do it. They have a man that they have, and I'm not going to talk about what happened to him a few days ago because we don't want that for anyone. But at the end of the day, they chose somebody who they knew they could push their agenda through. And they've stacked the deck in the Supreme Court. They're stacking the deck in the Senate. They're stacking the deck in all of the essential areas we need to continue to have rights as citizens of this country. And we need to make sure that every person who has right on their side, every person who believes that this country should stay free for everyone, not just for a privileged few, we need to make sure that this voting cycle, we speak up and make sure everyone in the Senate, everyone in the House, everyone that has a political powered seat knows that we can hire you and we can fire you, and we will make sure that we keep a record and ledger of the things you vote on, the things you stand on. And unfortunately, we have an uphill battle because even the John Lewis Voting Rights Act has an uphill battle because they're not even addressing that, because they know for a fact that if it passes, it puts the power back into people's hands. And so when they lose in this November, old red or orange hair won't have to call a governor to find other votes. This is what we're fighting against. This is what we have standing in front of us, people who are willing to bend and break every rule and every law just to stay in power. They're not a political party of the people. They're a political party of self. They're a political party of hatred. They're a political party of rights taking. And it's mighty funny to me that when things happened the other day, they wanted to tone down the rhetoric and then blamed it on the Democrats. But y'all are the ones that chose to tell people that there are certain people who are patriots in this country and certain other people who hate this country. But now all of a sudden you want to blame the rhetoric on other people when you are the ones that set that tone. And so again, I say, they're at their convention lying to each other. And it's a sad human being that can look in the mirror and lie to themselves and profess to themselves that they're not the reason that we have the heat and the division that we have in this country. It's not because of the other side. It's not because of both sides. It's because of one side, and we have an opportunity to vote every one of their asses out of office, and we need to make sure that we need every single person who has the right to vote, who has the willingness to vote, to go down there in November and make sure that we take their jobs from them, just like they're trying to take our rights from us.
Thank you, Pastor Collins. I think you got their attention. How's that? Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. Gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up the freedom land. Sing it again. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. I'm gonna, nobody turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up freedom land. I tell you, we've got to be able to speak out. Speak up, speak out. Forward together, not one step back. At this time, we have Kenny Matthews. Kenny? Come on up here, Kenny. I tell you, when you do this kind of work, you start running into people. People that have a heart. People that have a soul. People that can speak up freely. And so Kenny is here. He is the West Virginia Economic Justice Associate for American Friends Service Committee. And we're going to let Kenny come on up here and say his thing. Good to see you, Kenny.
Now, I have to go after Reverend Shiloh. That's crazy. And I'm a little bit taller than this, so I'm going to step out from here. So, voting is something that's very, very dear to me. I'm formerly incarcerated. So I was on parole and I wasn't allowed to vote. They said even though I was working a job, even though I was paying taxes, even though I had my own place and was moving forward in my life, I didn't earn the right to vote yet. And it's something that this country was founded on. No taxation without representation. Right? The founding fathers established that for a reason, because it's not something you earn. The right to vote isn't an earned privilege. It's something that is a right intrinsic to every human being, no matter what their walk of life is. And we live in a country that alienates millions of people from being able to vote just because they have a criminal background, as if they're no longer a human being. Being incarcerated, you're always treated like a number. That's all they reference you by. They don't reference you by your name. I didn't go by Kenneth Matthews when I was in the DCR. I went by 538485. That was my number while I was incarcerated. And that's how the world treats this, and society treats those that make mistakes. Now, they say I don't have the right to vote. But, on the other hand, a felon can be president. I don't know about you, but if I can run for president of the United States, then everybody who's a felon should be able to vote. That doesn't make any sense to me. That's not equal. That's not fair. And for me, it's one of those things that shows how much the other side is willing to do anything and everything to keep people from exercising their God-given rights. And the right to vote is something that, again, is not earned. is from the age that you can understand what you're voting for. You should be able to vote. They let you in school. Who wants to go out to recess now? And you have the right to vote. You can raise your hand and say vote. They teach that in school from an early age. So why is it because somebody makes a mistake or somebody is considered a fringe part of society that all of a sudden they have to earn that right? And that's one of the things that I work towards. We've tried to introduce here at the Capitol legislation so that upon release, everybody has the right to vote. Upon release from incarceration, your rights as a human being is reinstated. Because that's what it's about. It's about treating people like human beings. You're no longer a number. You're no longer a casualty. You are a person. And people don't feel whole until they get all their rights back. Until they can actually participate in the process to elect those that represent them. There is a piece missing. You can do everything right. You can have a good life. You can have, a car, home, a decent job. But until you're able to say, I voted for the person that is representing me, you don't feel complete. And it's something that I've battled for years. And in 2022, after me being off of parole, I was able to vote for the first time in my adult life. And it was something that was like that marker of like, I finally made it. I finally arrived. I was actually considered. And that's really what voting is the right to be your opinions, your thoughts to be considered, and you not brushed aside or marginalized just because of what you look like, where you grew up at, or a mistake that you made. So we need all those that have the right to vote, have the obligation to vote. Because regardless if you go to the polls and register your vote or not, you're voting. You're either making your voice known or you're saying, I'm going to ride with whatever everybody else chooses. You're still voting. I believe we should all just go ahead and let our real opinions be known. This past primary election, 30% voter turnout. 30%. That is sad. That means 3 out of the group here, only 8 of us voted. That is horrible in the country that we live in the political climate that we're in. That is horrible to have only 30% of the population actually come out and vote. If 50% or 70% or 80% or even 100% came out to vote, how much different would the elections look like? How much different would this capital demographic and makeup look like? We have the obligation to instruct and encourage all of our loved ones, everyone we know, that their voice does matter. There were elections that was 50 votes in difference. 50 votes. That is nothing. That is absolutely nothing. We get 50 people on, free slushy day at, 7-Eleven. Why can't we get 50 people to show up to vote? 50 more people. For all those that have family members that are incarcerated or can't vote, vote for them. Be their voice. Because regardless whether or not you realize it, we depend on you to lift up your voice when we can't. And that's why I want everybody to lift up your voice and say, I will vote.
I tell you, Kenny, we're going to run you for an office. How's that? I tell you. I think you're speaking the truth here. Show me what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like. Show me what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like. going to vote. And it's good to see people who are willing to get up, share their stories, and help us to get the vote out. I tell you, I met this young lady several years ago who inspired me when she ran for office. And it's sometimes not the easiest thing to run for office, especially when you're up against people who may not look like you, sound like you, and may not have your message. But I heard this young lady's message and what she did, and she engaged people and got us out to vote and be willing to speak out. At this time, I am going to ask for Kathy Ferguson, who is a community activist, always in good trouble. She's an advocate. She's the former director of our Future West Virginia DC Admissions Act. So I am just so happy to bring Kathy up because this is what democracy looks like.
Good evening. Can you guys hear me? Yes. All right, great. I'm here to talk about DC statehood, and this is actually tied to voting rights, to the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. I'm going to start a little bit. This might sound familiar to you. On January 6th, 2021, all of America and the world at large became witness to an insurrection as hundreds of people invaded the Capitol grounds, destroying things and people they crossed paths with, in an attempt to stop the certification of votes that would establish Joe Biden as the duly elected 46th President of the United States of America. Many, myself included, wondered and verbally questioned why the National Guard wasn't called up to support this overwhelming mob at the Capitol, who overwhelmed the Capitol Police in thwarting their efforts of that mob. The mayor of D.C. was deemed incompetent by many for her perceived failure to make that call for National Guard assistance. But the reality is that the Guard can only be called up by the governor of their respective state jurisdiction. And unfortunately, D.C. is not a state. In the District of Columbia, the President of the United States is the only one who can call up the Guard as he or she presides over them. And so it doesn't take much to imagine why we know and now understand why that relief was not provided in the immediate crisis. This is one little fact of many that's an argument for D.C. gaining statehood, its ability to be autonomous via the passage of the D.C. Admissions Act. It truly feels incredulous that in 2024, the 700,000 plus residents of Washington, D.C. still exist in a literal and figurative state of taxation without representation, as Brother Kenny alluded to earlier. I mean, don't we all remember that elementary history lesson about the rallying cry of no taxation without representation that sparked and underscored the American Revolution? It's still germane in our life and times. And yet, again, that is our truth in 2024. So sure, D.C. folks do get to vote for the President of the United States. And yes, they do get a representative that can draft legislation. But there's no true representation because that person cannot cast a vote for or against any proposed federal legislation on behalf of their D.C. constituency. So consider, if you will, the Build Back Better legislation that came into existence at one point. It was about extending child tax credits, addressing climate change, green economies, building infrastructure and healthcare, among many other things. Or Joe Biden's Infrastructure Act, which is creating jobs, expanding internet access, and making improvements for highways, railways, bridges, and roads. And of course, the John Lewis Act, which brings us here today as we fight to ensure access to the vote through measures like early voting, day of registrations, voting holidays, absentee ballots, and the like. These things are critically important, and sadly, D.C. residents, most of whom would benefit from such acts, had little to no ability to weigh in on these legislative matters because they have no elected official to do so. This voicelessness has been happening for hundreds of years, so the time is now to fully pass the D.C. Admissions Act and enfranchise the 750,000 people in our capital city. The veil of silence that has been imposed upon these folks, some that we may personally know as friends or family members, I know I have folks there, that veil must be lifted. We cannot ignore the fact that the district, which is comprised mostly of black and brown folks, has been systematically marginalized and excluded from having an important say in legislation that directly impacts them. It is a form of voter suppression, and the only way to truly address that is to ensure D.C. statehood. Let's not be fooled into thinking that if D.C. was predominantly white and wealthy, that they would have no say about where and how their tax dollars are spent. They would certainly be afforded the 2 congressional reps they're deserving of and the senator that they are due. History bears that out because incremental gains towards full representation and statehood have come as the District of Columbia has become more and more gentrified. Again, let's not forget nor deny the longtime generational inhabitants of D.C. and giving them their due. People who played a large role in creating the historical, cultural, and social mecca while attending to the needs of the political elite for generations. Folks that have paid more for taxes per person than any other state. They deserve the vote. Voting rights for D.C. shouldn't just stop at casting a presidential vote or their city council. D.C. statehood is critical and crucial for ensuring all eligible Americans that they're fully franchised to weigh in on federal level democratic reforms. We no longer should operate with an in due time mentality. It's time, it's past time that we address D.C. statehood as an American right, as a civil right, and more importantly, it's the right thing to do. Pass the D.C. Admissions Act now.
Good trouble. Good trouble. Shake, shake, shake. Shake injustice off. Shake, shake, shake. Shake injustice off. Shake, shake, shake. Shake injustice off. In the name of freedom. Shake injustice off. Shake, shake, shake. Let me hear it. Shake injustice off. Shake, shake, shake. Shake injustice off. Shake, shake, shake. Shake injustice off. In the name of freedom, shake injustice off. Want to thank that good trouble that we can all get into to help everyone to have the right to vote. And here's a man who works with this each and every day, the executive director of the West Virginia Citizen Action Group, Gary Zuckett. Gary?
Thank you, Karen. It's great to be here today with all these voter protection and voter support folks. I've been working with them for a while, but I'm going to talk today about voter purges. Those things that make you think that you're a registered voter, but then you go to the polls and you find out you've been purged. How does that happen? Well, the legislature and our current Secretary of State, who works right behind us here, want to make it easier to remove voters from the rolls based solely on infrequent voting. And this ain't right. Once you're registered, you should stay registered. According to a Dominion Post article from just last month, according to the Secretary of State, was quoted in that article saying that since 2017, more than 400,000 voters have been canceled. This is because they either died, they moved away, or they were a duplicate registration, maybe a father and son, or maybe somebody that had the same name that lived someplace else. There's a lot of different things. This year, he says that more than 109,000 records have been identified for cancellation, and from those, they may have another 75 to 80,000 names come off the rolls if these people don't vote in this election. So we have a problem here, folks. And one of the ways that the Freedom to Vote Act protects the right to vote is by setting national standards for ballot access and providing safeguards against the wrongful and discriminatory voter roll purges. So we need the Freedom to Vote Act. Without these protections, right now, it's up to us to encourage our families, our friends, our neighbors, and others in our communities to check their registration status and confirm that they are eligible to vote now, far out from the election. Make sure you can do that on the Secretary of State's webpage. You can go and type your name and your address in, and it'll tell you if you have a current registration. And West Virginia Citizen Action is proud to be partnering with the West Virginia Civic Engagement Table to communicate with West Virginians whose names have been removed from the polls since the last election. We will be sending out thousands of letters to voters whose names have been taken off the rolls to make sure that they know that they've been purged and to make sure that they have a chance to get back on before the election. So we just wanted to lift that up and say, we need this Freedom to Vote Act. We need the protections that it has against unfair purging. And that's all I have to say. Glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for addressing that, Gary. My son was 18 when he registered to vote. He voted in every election. He was ready to vote again, and I just happened to go on the Secretary of State's website, and they had purged him. And we had to go through the whole process again of registering to vote. My daughter worked the polls this last primary, and now she is going to have to go back and re-register to vote because they said that she was not committed. She wasn't a voter. I can't remember the exact term. These things are happening. I run a senior citizen program. The senior citizens signed up to work. They had to report to the polls at 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning. They would get there, and they would tell them, your name is not on the list, when it was. So there's a lot of crazy stuff going on. And when you find out, you need to report it. Just don't let them get away with it at all. I say voter, you say power. Voter. Voter. I say voter, you say power. Voter. Voter, power. Show me what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like. Show me what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like. And they're going to get sick of hearing us because we're going to be chanting until November. We're going to just be chanting, and believe me, that's just the beginning. We got a whole lot of work to do. And this lady here stays in good trouble. She is the tri-chair of the Poor People's Campaign of West Virginia. She is now the board member of the Yale School of Public Theology and Public Policy, West Virginia's own Pam Garrison.
Thank you. And thank everybody for coming out, for letting your voices be heard today. I'm here to honor John L. Lewis. And one of the things that I admired most about him is his persistence. And he never gave up. From The time he started this trail when he was young till the day he died. He knew that just because they got a crumb, that they weren't going to get the cake unless they organized, unless they kept on. And that's what it took for every one of us. I think that we will do John an injustice if we do not carry on the baton, pick it up and carry it on. There is just so much work that needs to be done that John left undone, and we have to be the ones that carry it on. I'm an advocate for the disabled, a staunch advocate for the disabled, and I would like to lift them up here today. They are one of the most underserved, underrepresented voter constituency that we have. A lot of them, don't get the education that they need to know how to vote. If you are a family member, if you are a caregiver, they need your assistance. They need your help. And they need to know that they have that right. That is their right. And we have seen this legislature take and attack our disabled like never before. They've cut their resources. They're trying to take their assisted living away and stick them in institutions and then privatize the institutions. You know, I can go on and on with one thing after another, the attacks that they have done on the disabled. And if we have to be a voice for these, the most least among us. We have to be their voice and their legs and their ears and their voices. We have to be there for them, to assist them, to help them. Because a lot of these policies, they are some of the most affected by them. And they have to know that just because they're disabled, don't mean they don't have a right to say so, that they don't have a right to vote. And you wouldn't believe how many of them don't know that. And I've been going into some of the assisted living to try to help them register to vote. I had so many that was needing help being able to register to vote, I couldn't get to all of them. I need for everyone to know this is an untapped voting block that I need America to help, that I need America to help us represent. Because if not, they're killing them. They are literally killing them. When they don't get the health care they need, when they don't get the assistance that they need. All of these laws are affecting them. And so I'm here because I know that John Lewis didn't represent, and he didn't fight for just one person. He fought for us all, and he expects us to do the same thing. He expects for us to fight for our brothers, our sisters, our neighbors, our families. And that's what it's going to take. It's going to take all of us together, and it's going to take education. And we got to get up off our ducks and quit being so complacent and wait for somebody else to do it. We got to be the John L. Lewises. It is time that we can't bury our civil rights leaders and our leaders and just say, give up and say that's all there is. Or we're losing everything they fought for. It's time. And it's time for America to see us and to hear us. So, thank you all, and thank you for coming out.
We need to make sure that these people know that their Social Security is on the line. They need to know that their Medicare is on the line. They need to know that their Medicaid is on the line. They need to know that they're going to up the retirement age to 70. They need to know the details of the policies that these people are putting into place. because somebody's hurting my brother. And it's gone on too long. Somebody's hurting my brother, and it's gone on far too long. Yes, it's gone on far too long. I tell you, it's gone on far too long. Somebody's hurting my brother, and it's gone on far too long. And we won't be silent anymore. No, we won't be silent anymore, because we're going to work as hard as we can to make sure that everyone has a right to express their vote, their say in what we need to do. At this time, we have Ryan Kirkpatrick, who is a youth organizer, a young West Virginia forward voting rights and youth. And believe me, I've known him for a little while, and we stay in good trouble together. Here you go, Ryan.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Ryan Kirkpatrick. I'm a student at West Virginia State University. According to a census report, college-age students are registered to vote at a rate of 82%, while the rest of the demographic is lingering around 66% registered. With that being said, you would think, why, with all that power in the numbers and, your voice, why aren't you getting out and voting? Well, the reason is simple. We are living within the confinements of the shortcomings of the generation before us. What I mean by that is there's a conglomerate of different problems that students are facing in their social economic environments that is so easy to get consumed by and swallowed up in your own life, that you're chasing education and careers and sometimes juggling as much as adults. When students are having to fight and stay up working 1, 2, or sometimes 3 or more jobs to put themselves through school, and focusing in on political policy will become narrow-sighted due to the more pressing matters, trying to find affordable housing, navigating financial aid or the lack thereof, while maintaining a social life to keep themselves mentally balanced. Another contribution to absence in college-age voting is a lack of trust in politics. Every president here recently has been glorifying the idea of free college. That may sound nice to some, but for us, we want to hear when and how. We are going into schools enrolling and paying 9.1% on average more than what our parents did in the 70s. Things continue to go up in cost. Things like gas prices, utilities, fast food, and other things, it's getting out of hand. And quite frankly, if we don't get out and vote and get involved, we're going to be stuck in the same situation that we're in. Honestly, think about this next example that I'm going to give. Why in the hell would you overturn Roe v. Wade? This affects women ages 18 through 24, which are the college-age students who need the access to the resources the most. The college-age women are the most vulnerable states in their lives, and they're trying to navigate in a world that is completely dangerous and unsafe. In this instance, a political side favored the opportunity to give it to the states on whether they want to have reproductive health care for women. This was a way to eradicate it. We were not thinking of the demographic that they were affecting entirely. We simply don't have the money to get in a car and travel states on end to go get reproductive health care. We don't have the money, nor do we have the time. To conclude, presidential debates used to be a place where candidates would conduct themselves with manner, poise, and respect. And now we're seeing the people smear one another's personal lives across a national platform where there is no resolution between the two. They can divide a nation, which is the same concept that happens here on the state level. We need to, as America, come together and start forming ideas of where America is heading. Because I'm telling you now, environmentally, economically, socially, and morally, we're going backwards. Thank you.
I am so proud of West Virginia and the people that have been here today to speak. And I'm going to call Sally. I'm going to call Sally up after we have West Holden, that's going to come up and speak out as a public citizen on the issue of voting. The thing that we know is that we have to get in good trouble. We have to make sure that we're out there preparing people to vote. It doesn't mean that you just show up and vote. You need to be educated. You need to know what the issues are and what is going to help you as a West Virginia, as an American here in our communities. And I just want to especially thank the people who have put this together today. Sally, I'm going to ask you to come up after Wes, and we can call up other people. And I just want to say thank you. I'm Karen Williams. I will be out there getting in good trouble because my son said, Daddy, get ready. He said, what Mama's doing is real. Get your bail money ready. And if that's what it takes, that's what it's going to take. All right, Wes.
Thank you, Karen. We're here today to commemorate the life of John Lewis. At the age of 23, he was the youngest person to stand to Dr. Martin Luther King at the March on Washington. It was at our nation's capital that John Lewis said, to those who have said, be patient and wait. We must say that patience is a dirty word. We cannot be patient. We do not want to be free gradually. We want freedom, and we want it now. We cannot depend on any political party. He went on to say that we all recognize the fact that if any racial, social, political, and economic changes are to take place in our society, the people and the masses must bring them out. In the struggle, we must seek more than civil rights. We must work for the community of love, peace, and brotherhood. Our minds, our hearts, and souls cannot rest until freedom and justice exist for all people. And he ended that speech by saying, wake up, America. Do you recognize this symbol in my hand? It is a double V. Let me tell you a historic fact. Back during World War II, a black Navy cook at Pearl Harbor who served on the USS West Virginia, his name was Dory Miller. When the Japanese sunk the USS West Virginia, he rescued many sailors and manned a machine gun and shot down a Japanese plane. Yet he was not honored by the United States Navy because he was black. However, there was a black newspaper, the Pittsburgh Courier, that launched the Double V campaign. The first V for victory over the enemies of war. The second V is for the enemies of justice here in the United States. And as a result of this equal representation, Dory Miller became the first black man to be awarded the Navy Cross. If he was a white man, he would have been presented with the Medal of Honor. And during the invasion of Pearl Harbor, Dory could have said to himself, I'm just a cook. I've never fired a machine gun before. He could have decided to seek his own personal safety, but he wanted to serve his country and fight for his country and fight back at the enemy of this country. He did not wait. Dory Miller decided to act. And the African community could have decided to stay quiet, but they did not. They decided to act. Dory Miller inspired John R. Lewis. And on the eve of Dr. Martin Luther King's arrest in Birmingham, 8 white preachers issued a plea for moderation. They basically said, wait for a better time. The Kennedys said, wait for a more convenient time. Billy Graham said, wait. The black professional class in Birmingham said, wait. The editors of the New York Times said, give government a chance to do something. So you know what happened? While Martin Luther King was in jail, he wrote a letter to 8 of those white preachers. And we know this now from Dr. King's famous letters in the Birmingham jail. People, I tell you, now is the time to act. Now is the time. Do not wait. Get up off your feet. Make others know that we need to vote for our rights. St. Paul in 2 Corinthians 6:1 said, I tell you now is the day of favor. Today is the day of salvation. Notice St. Paul did not say, wait for a more convenient time. That's what the devil's telling you. That's what these people in Milwaukee are trying to tell you. That is to say, they do not want change. Again, I give you the immortal words of John L. Lewis, and they're also written on the banner. If not us, then who? If not now, then when? Wake up, America. Wake up, West Virginia. Thank you.
Thank you for that wonderful, wonderful, stimulating speech. And I learned so much from it, something I didn't know from history, so I appreciate that. Tonight, I want to thank everyone who came out. I know there was a little bit more to the program, but because we all know one another standing here, and I see that there are representatives of people whose lives are affected by the right to vote. Every single person's life is affected in a different way. So let's make sure that we joyously go out, show people that it matters. We collectively can make a difference in this country when we vote. So thank you so much. If some of you will stick around, we'll maybe go with the banner over to the in front of the Capitol and get a few more shots, and then go out and work for justice. Right. Thank you.